Hey everybody, it's Charlie Craven, and I'm back with another cool little fly. I was digging through my Caddis box this morning, kind of just checking out some patterns that I've carried for years, and this one crossed my mind again. And this fly is called a CDC Elk, and it's from an old friend of mine, Hans Weileman, from the Netherlands. And super simple little fly, and can sort of cross over for a lot of stuff. Although I typically fish it as a caddis. And it's got some unusual construction and is pretty versatile in that you can fish it as a dry, which is how I typically fish it. But you can also let it sink and fish it as an emerger. And it works equally well both ways. So kind of a cool little fly, two materials, and really a fun fly to fish. You know, very, very buoyant. And the idea being that the body is a CDC feather that's wrapped up the hook, and you can kind of see when I turn him inside out, it almost looks like dubbing for the first part. And then we've got some sort of longer fibers that become almost like hackle with a little deer hair wing on top. What happens when you fish this is these dangly long pieces sort of hang down in the water like a pupa or an emerging caddis. So pretty realistic and cool little fly. So I'm going to twist this up for you, and we'll see what you think. You can tie some of these up. These are easy. So I'm going to take a Tiemco 100 SP BL size 16. Now Hans ties this on a Mustad C49S, I believe is the hook that he uses. And I do have some over in my cabinet, but I'm not going to dig them out. So these 100 SPs are on my desk, and they'll work fine. And I'm going to start off with some Nanosilk. And this is gray, which is, to my eyeball is tan anyway, but it's not going to show, so it doesn't matter. So gray 18-aught Nanosilk. And I'm going to start this thread just up here an eye length or so behind the eye, and get a nice thread base down the shank, and then run forward again. And what I want to do is pick out a CDC feather about like so, and you can see that's pretty sparse and almost even a little ratty. Perfect example of a feather that we want to use for this fly. What I'm going to do is about midway through, I'm going to create a separation point. Like so. And I'm going to catch the tip of that feather and draw it down till those tips are right at the tie-in. And then I'll wrap over it to the butt end of the fly, to the bend of the hook. I'll bring my thread back up. Once I've got that thread back up to my starting point, I'm going to take my hackle pliers, and I'm going to grab the butt end of this feather, and I'm going to begin to wrap it. And I don't really worry too much about how pretty it wraps or if it wants to twist. But you can see those first few turns almost look like dubbing. And then as I start to work forward, I'm going to sort of fold these fibers back as I get up to my tie-off point, almost like you would a soft hackle. Then I'll tie that stem off with several tight turns and come in and trim that out. I'm going to wrap down over that stem end just to make sure that's anchored. You can see a lot of that hackle's wrapped around the hook. I'll just take my scissors and unwind it. And you want that kind of big, ratty looking collar like that. Now you can trim these down. If you're tying a small, and this is a 16, and these are, they're probably twice the length of the shank, maybe even a little bit longer, but that's not necessarily too long on a fly like this. If you needed to make it smaller, what I would not suggest just going in with your scissors, but come in with your thumbnail, and you can kind of tear them off at random lengths to shorten those down a bit, but those really don't need to be shortened much, so I'm going to leave them as they are. So I'm going to smooth my thread base here at the front and let my thread hang, and then I'm going to come in with some coastal or hopper deer, and I like to use a pretty good bundle. People always say how much is a pretty good bundle. It's a big bunch. I'll say, God, I don't know, cutting it off the hide, 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch or so. And I'm going to take and measure that against the hook And I'll just use my thumbnail to kind of gauge where the back edge of the hook eye is. And then what I'll do is butt that in my fingers. I'm going to cut that hair off with the hair in my material hand. And I want to cut it off nice and square, so I've got square butt ends there. Now I'll lay these in. You can see how I'll slide this back from the front so that those butt ends are behind the hook eye. And I like to leave a little bit of length on those butt ends. I'll put 2 turns around, and I'm not going to let go of this hair, but I'm going to tighten that thread toward me. And then I'm going to work forward through those butt ends, just tight increments, tight with the thread all the way around. 3 or 4 turns, kind of sweeping back, exactly like I'd do an Caddis. I like leaving those butt ends in. They add a lot of buoyancy to the fly. Then I'll creep my thread just right up behind the hook eye, and I'll whip finish it there. Come in and trim my thread out. I see on your side there's one hair that didn't cooperate, and we're just going to get rid of him. And that is our finished CDC and elk. Not a bad idea. Put a little shot of head cement underneath there. Mine's sitting right here, so I'll do it just on that tie down. But that's our finished CDC and elk. I used a tan CDC feather there. Very often I tie these with natural CDC, natural dun colored CDC, but CDC comes in a ton of colors these days, and feel free to mix and match. The wing color always stays the same. I just use natural deer hair, but you can vary the color of the CDC, much as you would dubbing on a conventional caddis. But cool little fly. It's not one that necessarily catches your eye. There's not much to look at. It's a little messy, but that's, I think, part of the beauty of it is on the water. This fly is very lively. CDC, when it gets wet and dangles under the surface, is just got a ton of movement that's unlike any other material you can get, and that's why so many people have started to use it on nymphs. And at one point that was a new thing until we figured that out, and that turns out to be a pretty good thing. But that's for my old friend Hans. Hope you guys enjoyed that. That's the CDC and elk, cool little caddis pattern. Twist some up, see if you like them. I bet you will. I'm usually right. You've learned that by now. Thanks for watching. Charlie Craven. Take care. See ya.